Thanks very much for everyone for having us here. As Audrey said, I'm Gavin Lowe. I work for the region of Durham. My colleague Patricia Iliadis, she'll be on the panel for today because she has more in-depth, hands-on knowledge about what I'm going to discuss. I was more about the development of those processes. And for today, what we're going to talk about is essentially who here likes an interview? Who here likes going for an interview? No. Exactly. Gone are the days of where you can walk into an organization and say, are you going to cause me any problems? No? All right, you start tomorrow. Okay, we all know that the HR function in recruiting has become more diverse, and in response to many things such as community diversity, various industries, things like that coming into our communities, that we are required to become more diverse in our recruitment strategies. And one of our techniques is using an education and experience indicator that we've developed in-house. And what that is a document that's been rolled out across the organization, which goes prior to the interview, prior to the assessments that we have candidates fill out. And so far it's been a great success. And what it has done and what our goal was to do was to increase the objectivity of the recruitment process. So a little bit about the background before we go into the education and experience indicator, or commonly referred to as the EEI within our department, is it stemmed from case law for the most part, and where case law and arbitrators were saying that we need to become more open to different ways of recruiting candidates. We can't have that one sort of cookie cutter approach, and also for the fact that two cases that I'll just briefly mention in the next couple of slides mentioned that the interview is not a good way to assess someone's potential on the job. By all means, we don't discount the interview, but we can't put as much weight on that interview. So one case was the Aberfords Police Department. That arbitrator said that the reliance on interviews to assess applicants using history or skill set is not sufficient. I think everyone would probably agree that an interview, if you've had a bad day, if you've had you're not good with speaking in front of people or having interviews, that can probably throw you off, and it might actually affect your ability to get that job. There's too much reliance on an interview, means we are assessing the applicant's interview skills and to some degree their personalities and ability to engage the people on that panel. And of course, with an interview being maybe only an hour long, 45 minutes, you have 45 minutes to make your splash in front of these people and do your dance and to impress these people. And arbitrators are saying that's not really an accurate reflection of how someone will actually perform in their job. Another case was arbitrator Devlin in the Greater Niagara Hospital case against ONA and the Ontario Nurses Association. This one was interesting because the hospital actually weighted the interview at 85% of the recruitment process. So let's say you've had a bad morning. You've got kids like I do, 5, 3, and 9 months that kept me up last night. True story. And you have to come in and do an interview. Well, obviously you're not going to be on the top of your game. But is that interview actually an actual accurate reflection of how you're going to perform that job, especially when it's weighted at 85%? I think I'd rather take an exam and show the people that I can actually do the job instead of doing the dance and engaging the personalities that may be on that interview panel. So our goal was to encourage and recommend departments within the region of Durham to utilize this new method. We needed to ensure, as always, competitions are fair, objective, reliable, and can withstand scrutiny if challenged at arbitrations. And for the most part, most departments have accepted or adopted this practice. And our main goal is to get less emphasis on the interview and more emphasis on the actual skills of the candidates. And we do that through various methods such as the EEI or the computer testing or work simulations or things of that nature. So our old process was the assessment and the interview. You'd get a call, you'd come in, do an assessment that was worth 40% of the competition, and your interview was worth 60%. Again, a high weight on that interview, which is very subjective. Our new process is we involve the EEI, which is about 20 to 30%, the assessments at 50, and the interview, the lesser of the weighted part of the competition. Okay. And of course, these percentages are just shown for example only. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to diversify the competition process so that we're not concentrating on personality so much in the interview, but we're actually identifying objective, quantifiable ways to assess candidates. So the competition can typically include 3 phases, maybe 4 if there's an extra interview. And the weighting is determined ahead of schedule. So we're not sort of rejigging things after the fact. There's a predetermined scoring matrix. Current process is the first question in interviews used to be, describe how your experience in education relates to this position. And it's kind of one of the awkward questions when it comes to asking candidates that question, because people within one question have to rehash their whole career, which is very, very unnerving. You know, so most of you probably said, you know, I caught everything, oh, another thing in this. And you're not on the ball, so to speak, because how are you supposed to rehash your whole career in about 5 minutes of discussion? So here's a sample of DEI. And what it is it's a document that's sent out to the candidates prior, and we get them to identify their education experience without actually being within front of an interview panel right off the bat. On the left-hand side, we identify in this regards, it's the Clerk 2 requirements, what the Clerk 2 requires, and we get the candidates to say on the right-hand side what they have in, that makes them a good candidate for that position. What this does is it identifies the individual's experiences and skills ahead of time. It also provides the recruiting team an ability to clarify and to think of other questions for those specific candidates. So prior, when you're in an interview, you're asked about, well, tell us about a time when you worked at this place or this place or this place, what education do you have? You're nervous, you're in an interview. This way, the candidate actually has the ability, without the pressure of an interview, to identify their skills and abilities up front. The procedure is the EDI document is emailed whenever possible to selected candidates. Candidates are asked to return it by a deadline. It's based on a predetermined score, and typically candidates are scheduled for the next couple of steps. Now, quite often a lot of people say, well, how does this sort of relate to diversity? Now, I've talked about, you know, going for an interview and you've had a bad night, your kids have been up sick, you know, snowstorm, things like that. But when it comes to diversity, there's also a lot of changes and differences in cultures. And it's quite apparent when you interview people from different cultures. Some cultures value assertiveness. Some cultures don't. Some cultures value the fact that you can say, I did this, I did that, where some other cultures will say, that person's being rude. They must have worked with other people. So the EEI actually allows the person to identify upfront and removes that ability or the potential of the subjective information being applied to them upfront, that they provide that information without the pressure of the interview. So they don't necessarily say, I did this in the EI or I did that, but allows them to formulate their responses without actually having that potential cultural barrier when you actually come face to face with that interviewing panel. And by all means, like I said, we don't discount the interview panel because you're not going to hire someone straight off the street that you've never met. So some of the observations, the hiring process is more objective. It provides candidates the opportunity to expand on their experience in education ahead of schedule. Quite often when we get candidate resumes, it's only 2 pages, so this provides another document. You know, and we can also alleviate some people's concerns because we say the interview isn't as weighted as much. Like I said before, I don't think anyone sits here and says, woohoo, interview, love them. It's customized for every competition, and hiring managers have a better understanding of the candidates they are considering, and they're only considering the education experience they have actually placed on the EEI, not actually where the education experience was found or gained. Candidates possess related experience management is looking for versus only educational qualifications, so it allows them to expand more about themselves. Candidates have a better understanding of the job requirements, and they're linking their experiences as it relates to the position. So quite often, you know, in an interview, you'll probably said, you know, did I get that answer? Is that what you want in that question? It allows the people to be more focused in their responses. So going forward for the region, the recruitment process will continue to evolve. We have to evolve because our community, our candidates, our industries are evolving. We are going to start looking at less and less weight on an interview. Of course, again, it will be weighted at some point, but we're going to sort of capitalize or at least concentrate more on the quantifiable aspects of a candidate versus the personality engaging aspects of the candidate.